When someone says, hey, I'm not interested, respond with this. So ledge is in orange, disrupt is in blue, and ask is in green, right? When someone says, I'm not interested, hey, what's going on, guys? Today, we're going to be talking about prospecting objections and rejections, what the difference is, how to overcome those. We're going to give you a 3-step framework to overcome any objection. And we're going to walk you through the top 5 sales objections and common prospecting objections that we're seeing. And then later on in this video, there's going to be a document on prospecting objections and sales objections that you are going to want to steal. So let me go ahead and pull up my computer. And what we're going to be talking about really quickly, guys, the overview is the difference between objections and rejections, the top sales prospecting objections, how to overcome any objection and rejection, the 3-step framework for getting past any objection, and how to anticipate the most common objections and rejections and objection lists that you're going to want to steal. So let's go ahead and begin. So what are the differences between objections and rejections? So first, rejections are essentially when you're doing prospecting, time is the hardest ask in any sales process. When you are prospecting, you mostly aren't getting objections, you're getting rejections, right? So people are rejecting your request for time because if we said earlier, the hardest ask in sales is time. People are rejecting that ask for time because they don't really know what you could provide to them in value for that in exchange for that time. So those are rejections. Let's talk about objections. Objections are while you're speaking to the prospect, moving them through the sales process or pitching your services, you're going to get objections, right? Now, objections are not rejections. Objections can be a sign of confusion, concerns, sorting out options, subconscious and cognitive biases, risk aversions, cognitive overload, and the fear of change. Now, what they can look like is like this. So these are the top 5 sales objections that we see, right? Uncertainty, financial support, costs, and logistics. Now, the number one objection that in any sales team that should be the only objection that is acceptable is this logistics objection right here. Now, inside of our Facebook group, we actually go through each and every single one of these top 5 objections and how to overcome those. And how to overcome essentially the only acceptable objection is in logistics. So we put a link down in the description below, and inside of that link is going to push you to our Facebook group. In that Facebook group, we have a video on how we go over all of these right here. So top 5 sales objections: not sure that this is for me, uncertainty, I can't afford this, financial, I need to run this by my partner and spouse, that's support, let's follow up in 6 months, that's essentially like the cost, or it could be also uncertainty if they're not, kind of willing to meet with you, or if they're not willing to sign up within 6 months. Let me move some money around, logistics, let me talk to my business partner, I got to run this by my wife. That could also be some logistics. Now, these are common prospecting objections. All set right now, we are doing this in-house, just send over more info, follow up in a few months, just tell me the price and no thanks. Now, there are ways to overcome these objections, right? So let me walk you guys through. We're going to talk about that here in a second. We're going to talk about the ledge, disrupt, and ask method. So let's really quickly talk about prospecting objections and rejections. Prospecting objections are the most severe. They are harsh, they're cold, and they're most of the time flat out rejections. The reason is that prospecting is interrupting. You're essentially coming into someone's schedule and you're interrupting them. People don't like being interrupted. Now, if you fail to do outbound prospecting, you're going to not be able to fill your pipeline, and usually you're not going to be able to have the sales goals that you're looking for, right? Now, inbound versus outbound. Inbound is essentially the same thing. You're disrupting someone's essentially day, right? Because someone's on YouTube, someone's on Facebook, someone's on TikTok. They're scrolling through and then they see an ad that's kind of interrupted, but the key part difference is you're essentially interrupting them with a message, and then that inbound lead, they're clicking on an ad and actually like saying, hey, I want some more information for you. So there are 3 types of objections that you will receive in prospecting specifically: reflections, brush-offs, and true objections. So let's dive down into these. Reflections. Sometimes people respond out of habit because they have their own internal buyer script when someone approaches them, right? A lot of people have their own internal biases on salespeople, and when someone comes to them, they immediately trigger that automatic response to like deflect. So these are some of the conditioned responses to your interruption, right? Now, these are brush-offs. Brush-offs, this is your prospect telling you to get lost nicely. Hey, call me in a month. Prospects have learned that salespeople are willing to accept these falsehoods and go away because they don't want to avoid conflict. Now, that's not going to be you. Through this video, we're going to walk you through how to overcome those brush-off objections. You don't want to be that salesperson that's going to accept the falsehood and go away because someone says call in a month, right? You want to push them a little bit further until you get that true objection. Now, the true objection is this seems a little bit more transparent, logical rebuttals to your request. Think of these as logistical objections. Okay, so let's walk you through how to handle objections. So there's a 3-step framework for turning around objections. Call this ledge, disrupt, and ask. So let's talk about ledge. This is essentially a memorization automatic response that does not require you to think. Now, the initial physiological and emotional response to an objection or a rejection is essentially fight or flight. If you ever had someone say, like, no, that's not, what I'm looking for, or, flat out rejection, it's involuntary. It's a response to where you just want to like combat or like flight, like you just want to get back to them. And the last thing that you want to do is argue. So what you're going to do is you're going to ledge. Essentially, it's a memorized response to give your brain a couple of seconds to be able to like catch up to that emotion, so you can kick aside that emotional side of your brain and start thinking logically, right? That's essentially what I just said for this sentence right here. You want to catch up so they can raise above your emotions and gain control. And then disrupt. The prospects that you are contacting have been conditioned from hundreds, if not thousands, of prospecting messages. Expect you to act like any other salesperson, and they have an expectation of what you most likely will do next, right? So when your behavior matches their expectations, they don't even think, and they just react, right? Our brains are wired to ignore patterns and focus more on abnormalities, something different, unexpected, bright, new, shiny thing. So when you don't give them the response that they think you're going to give them, they're like, whoa, hold on a second, what is this? So when you do or say something that is totally different from what most salespeople say, your prospect starts to lean into you like that, like, whoa, what is that? They're leaning into you, versus when you say something that they're probably expecting, just like any other salesperson, they're like, whoa, dude, like they're leaning away from you. They're like, hold on a second, all right? So ledge, a memorized automatic response. It doesn't require you to think. Disrupt, come up with something that's totally different to get their attention, get them to lead into you, and then ask, right? To get what you want, you must ask for it. And this is where prospecting objection handling falls apart. This is where most prospecting objection handling falls apart. Most people will be hesitant and wait for the prospect to do the work, or they'll fumble over their words. They won't ask assertively, right? You must control your emotions and ask assumptively and assertively for what you want without hesitation. Half of the time, they'll throw you another objection and will probably most likely be closer to the truth, and be prepared to turn that around again, right? Don't ever argue. You don't want to fight with the prospect. It's not worth it. With prospecting, if you get 2 objections, now this is pretty key. If you get 2 objections and you still can't turn that prospect around, don't go past 2 objections, right? Graciously move on and come back to them in another day. Like, there's plenty of fish in the sea. The last thing that you want is just to continue to rebuttal and argue with it, because then at that point, they're going to like look at you and like, okay, I'm never talking to this person again. He's kind of combative. Right? So let's tie this all together really quick. If you want a copy of this PDF, down in the description below, we have a link where you can get access to this PDF and everything that we talked about here. All right, back to the document. So let's tie it all together. So the ledge, disrupt, ask that we just talked about, let's see that in action, right? So when someone says, hey, I'm not interested, respond with this. So ledge is in orange, disrupt is in blue, and ask is in green, right? When someone says, I'm not interested, it's like, okay, that makes sense. So that's giving your brain some time to catch up. And then this is the disrupt, something totally different that other salespeople aren't saying. Most people aren't the first time I reach out. That's exactly why we should meet. Do you have an open spot next week? Right? So that's the ask, right? So ledge, disrupt, ask. And it doesn't have to be in this order, ledge, disrupt, ask. Most of the times it is, but you can see here in this response, it's ledge, ask, and then disrupt, right? So when someone says, I'm happy where I am right now, okay, awesome. If you're getting great prices and service, you should never think about changing. All I want is a few minutes of your time to learn more about you and see if this is even a fit. At a minimum, we can give a competitive quote, and we'll keep you, and that will help you keep those other guys honest. Now let's go to the next one. So this is someone who says, hey, I'm too busy. That's exactly why I called. I figured you would be, and I want to find out time that's more convenient for you. Does morning or afternoon work best? Now, these objections can be over the phone. These objections can be in person, and you can actually type out these objections for like Instagram, or if you're like DMing someone on Facebook, or if you're having a conversation on LinkedIn, or text message, you can definitely use these in any format. Now, let's talk about the last one that we have here. When someone says, hey, just send over some more information. Oh, great. I'm happy to hear that you're interested in learning more, but we have so much information. The last thing that I want to do, as busy as you are, is to overwhelm you. So can you tell me specifically like what information you're looking to see? Right now, you guys can see how that ledge, disrupt, ask is used in real life. Now, later here, we're going to have a link to a document that's going to have all of these most common objections and responses. So again, if you want access to that, just go ahead and click the link in the description. We have this document as a PDF downloadable, and then also this link right here to this Google Sheet for you guys. So these are objections and rejections. Essentially, how can these be anticipated, right? So most salespeople never plan for objections. They simply just wing it on every single call. And you can only imagine what type of results that salespeople get when they wing it, right? Winging it, I feel like, is stupid And it's especially very much so with prospecting, because if you're winging it in a prospecting objection, most of the time you're going to get some type of objection. Every now and then. So I would feel like a third of the time someone's going to say no and mean no. Another third of the time someone's going to give you just like a brush off objection. And then another third of the time someone's going to like essentially give you some type of response that you can overcome, right? Now, the last thing that you want to do is just not be able to plan for those responses. You may think there is an unlimited number of prospecting objections, but really there's infinite ways that people could say no. Now, what you find is that, there's only a handful of most commonly objections used, especially for you and your service and your business, right? Normally it's in the form of like, hey, we're all set, not interested, don't have the budget, working with someone else. We're doing this in-house. I'm not the right person. I need to speak to someone before, whatever. Too busy. Just send me over more information. I'm overwhelmed. I got too many things going on right now. We tried that. That didn't work. And hey, I'm just checking in to see what your offer is. Now this is for like inbound leads, right? Now, when we've been working with our clients internally at Conversionly, what we've done is we've asked them to list out any possible objection that they can think about, both, for prospecting and inbound. And most of the time they really can't get past 15. And then we ask them to list out the most common ones that they see. It's most of the time around like 4 or 6, around 5. Now, you must be able to anticipate these objections that you are commonly coming across, and then so that you can respond to them properly and without emotion, right? Now, the thing about objections is the person who has the most emotional intelligence and can withhold that emotion and think logically, most of the time is going to win. So you must be able to anticipate those objections. Now, what we'd like to do is make a list of common objections that you hear in the first place, and then once you have that list, you start coming up with responses that are already scripted based off of the ledge, disrupt, ask method. So again, this prospecting document objections right here, we have most common objections, and these are objections that we see. I listed 4 right here for you guys to go ahead and get started. When you guys get access to this, just go ahead and just make a copy. So this could be your own, right? This is for you, or this is something that you can give your sales team or your prospecting team to be able to use. Start coming up with a list of the most common objections that you're seeing. As you start seeing those, every single time you get an objection, start to write it down, and you'll start to see what the common objections are. And then what you'll want to do is script out a response and then memorize those responses. So whenever you do get that objection, you can really quickly just use that and hopefully overcome that objection and book that person into like your calendar for an appointment to hopefully talk to you about your services. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video on prospecting objections and rejections. If you like this video, go ahead and click that thumbs up button. If you want to see more videos like this, just hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys on the next video. Thank you guys for watching.